Hey boys and girls, this is Miss Van and I'm going to read you a book called Leola and the Honey Bears. And this is an African American retelling of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Okay, it says, "Look, Grandma, look!" Leola sang out as she struggled to pull the biggest, wettest bedsheet from her laundry basket. Monday was always wash day, and much to her grandmother's surprise, Leola had decided to help hang out the sheets. "Listen, child, just put that sheet down before you get it all full of dirt," fussed Leola's grandmother. Leola sighed. "But I just want to help." "I know, Sugar Pie, but I don't need any help right now," Grandma replied. "You go on and play now, but don't go straying off anywhere, and don't go talking to any strangers." Then she went back to her wash. When she looked up again, Leola was merrily dancing away, headed for the nearby meadow. "You hear me, Leola?" Grandma shouted after her. "Mind me and don't go straying off." Leola did hear her grandmother, but she paid her no mind. She didn't even answer her. Leola and her grandmother lived in a small, cozy cottage not far from Pine Hollow Woods. When Leola got her way, she could be as sweet as brown sugar. But when she didn't, she could be as stubborn as Grandpa's old mule. Today, Leola couldn't find nothing fun to do. "I'm bored," she complained, "and I don't care what my grandma says. I'm going to do what I want to do." Suddenly, Leola caught sight of some milkweed seeds blowing in the breeze across the meadow. "Ooh-wee!" she squealed as she watched the silky pods float farther and farther from the cottage. Off she ran, chasing after them. Nothing looked familiar, but Leola didn't care. She was having too much fun following the cotton-like balls. Right into Pine Hollow Woods. Before she knew it, Leola was surrounded by prickly bushes and towering pine trees. The sunlight had all but disappeared. She turned around full circle, but she couldn't tell which way was home. "Oh no," cried Leola as she stared into the darkness. "I must be lost." She didn't mind what Grandma said. Now she's lost. Now way down deep in the Pine Hollow Woods stood a charming little inn. It was owned by a family known as the Honey Bears. Papa Honey Bear was a great big bear. Mama Honey Bear was a middle-sized bear. And Little Honey Bear was little, just like his name. Woodland folks from far and near came to visit the Honey Bear's Inn. They dined on delicious daily delights like dandelion stew, double-dipped daffodil custard, and sweet daisy dough cakes. Cheerful chatter and hearty laughter always filled the inn. Come evening time, Papa Honey Bear sat in his great big oak chair and gobbled his great big toasted walnuts. Mama Honey Bear sat in her middle-sized easy chair and munched her middle-sized roasted chestnuts. And Little Honey Bear sat in his little wooden chair and nibbled his little chocolate-covered pine nuts. There they are, sitting in their chairs. On this particular morning, after Mama Honey Bear had saved the last of her boysenberry grits, had served the last of her boysenberry grits to Mr. Hare and his grandbaby Bunny, she decided to make some special treats for her own family. She baked a great big plum pie for Papa Honey Bear, and a middle-sized rose-petal cobbler for herself, and a little huckleberry tart for Little Honey. When Papa Honey Bear and Little Honey had finished their morning chores, they were as hungry as bears. "Oh, darlings," chuckled Mama Honey Bear, "those pies just came out of the stove. They're much too hot now. Why don't we head over to Parson's Pond and catch a mess of catfish? By the time we get back, I'm sure the pies will be cool enough to eat." Meanwhile, poor little Leola was still wandering around the deepest, darkest part of Pine Hollow Woods. "I promised to always listen to my grandma no matter what I want to do. Leola said. "Just please let me find my way back home." Weary and confused, Leola popped down on a damp patch of ground. Suddenly, the cool forest air filled with warm, sweet smell. That must be my grandma's crackling biscuits baking, said Leola. Now I know I can find my way. But before Leola could finish, old Mr. Weasel came slowly slinking by. Howdy, sweet little missy, he said in his oily voice. Old Mr. Weasel gave a sly smirk as he hungrily licked his lips. Leola quickly hopped to her feet at the sight of the stranger. Old Mr. Weasel laughed out loud. Now, child, I don't mean to scare you none. He slithered around his way and that way. I'm just wanting to eat you a whole. He wanted to eat her. With that, Leola took off running as fast as her feet could carry her, following the sweet smell that filled the woods. Soon she came to a large clearing. As Leola wiped the sweat from her brow, she saw a little house in the distance. That must be a stranger's house, Leola thought to herself as she looked back over her shoulder for that old Mr. Weasel. I know my grandma told me about strangers, but I can't go back because old Mr. Weasel will eat me for sure. So Leola headed straight for the Honey Bear's Inn. She knocked on the heavy wooden door, but no one answered. The door was open just a little, so she poked her head in. Hello? Leola hollered. Excuse me, please. Are you folks in? Still no one answered. I know my grandma said never go inside folks' houses until first being politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time. And she quietly crept inside. The first thing to catch Leola's eye were the tasty-looking treats sitting on the kitchen counter. Ow-wee! Leola squealed. I'm so hungry. I know my grandma said never help yourself in folks' kitchen, but without first being politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time. So Leola stuck her small finger into Papa Bear's great big plum pie and tasted it. Ooh, no, Leola cried as she puckered her lips. It was much too sour. Then she took a taste of Mama Honey Bear's middle-sized rose petal cobbler. Ooh, no, it was much too sweet. Finally, she tasted Little Honey's little huckleberry tart, and it was absolutely delicious. Leola gobbled it down right then and there. Oh, I'm so tired, Leola said as she let out a big yawn. I know my grandma said never sit down in folks' houses until first being politely asked, but I don't think she'd mind this time. Leola was beginning to feel right at home. First she sat in Papa Honey Bear's great big chair, but it was much too hard, and so were his toasted walnuts. Then she sat in Mama Honey Bear's middle-sized chair, but it was much too soft, and so were her roasted chestnuts. Finally, Leola sat in Little Honey Bear's wooden chair. It felt like it was made just for her, and she loved his chocolate-covered pine nuts. She ate every one. Yummy, yum, yum. Before long, Leola had stuffed herself full of huckleberry tart and chocolate-covered pine nuts, so much that the buttons on her dress began to pull at her tummy, and her tummy began to ache. And then, kaboom! Little Honey Bear's little wooden chair broke all to pieces. Oh no, Leola moaned. I know my grandma said never make yourself too comfortable in folks' homes without first being politely asked, but I didn't think she'd mind this time. Leola dragged herself up from the floor to look for a place to lie down. At the top of the stairs, Leola found the Honey Bear's bedroom with 3 neatly made beds all in a row. First she lay down on Papa Bear's great big bed, but it was much too hard. Then she lay down on Mama Honey Bear's middle-sized bed, but it was much too soft. Finally, she lay on Little Honey's bed, and it was just right. Without another yawn, Leola fell fast asleep. There she is, sleeping in the bed. By this time, the Honey Bears were on their way home, laughing and singing their favorite fishing song. Mama fish are in the brook, Papa caught 'em with the hook, Mama fried 'em in the pan, Baby eat 'em like a man. When Papa Honey Bear swung open the door, the honey bears could not believe their eyes. Their cozy little inn looked like a strong gust of wind had just whipped through it. Everything was upside down and inside out. "Look!" growled Papa Honey Bear, looking at his in his great big bear voice. "Somebody's been eating my plum pie." "And look!" cried Mama Honey Bear in her middle-sized bear voice. "Someone's been eating my rose petal cobbler." "And look!" squealed little Honey in his little bear voice. "Somebody ate every bit of my huckleberry tart." Poor little Honey. "Look!" Papa Bear growled in his great big bear voice. "Somebody's been sitting in my chair eating my walnuts." "And someone's been sitting in my chair," cried Mama Bear in her middle-sized voice, "and they left chestnuts all over it." "And someone's helped himself to all my chocolate-covered pine nuts and broke my chair all to pieces," squealed little Honey in his little voice as his little brown eyes welled up with tears. "Shh," Mama Honey Bear whispered. "What's that strange sound?" With Papa Bear leading the way, they all tiptoed up the stairs. They crept past Papa's Honey Bear's great big bed and around Mama Honey Bear's middle-sized bed until they reached Little Honey's little bed, and they gasped at what they saw. "Look!" squealed little Honey. "A stranger!" Startled, Leola woke up and saw 3 angry-looking bears leaning over her. "Oh, please don't eat me," Leola cried. "We're not going to eat you," Mama Honey Bear said sternly. "But didn't your folks teach you any manners?" "Yes, ma'am," Leola stammered. "My grandma always told me never to go in folks' houses and never to help yourself in folks' kitchens and never ever sit down and make yourself too comfortable until first being politely asked, but I couldn't find my way back home, and Mr. Weasel tried to eat me, and I was just so scared and hungry I didn't think anyone would mind just this time." As the tears flowed down Leola's face, Mama Honey Bear saw that she was only a youngster, no different than her little Honey. Soon all was forgiven. Mama Honey Bear took the best straw basket and stuffed it full of scrumptious treats and covered it with one of her prettiest lace doilies. As she handed the basket to Leola, Mama Honey Bear called to Miss Blackbird, who was hovering ahead. "Mrs. Blackbird, would you mind guiding this child back home? We don't want her getting lost again." "Why, surely, Mama Honey," Mrs. Blackbird replied. "But we need to get going, child. It'll be dark soon." Mama Honey Bear gave Leola a tender goodbye bear hug. "You were lucky this time, Leola," she said, "but you might not be the next. Your grandma told you, right? She must love you very much." Leola had taken only a few steps down the path when she turned to wave at her new friends. Mama Honey Bear pulled Little Honey extra close, and Papa Honey Bear put his arm around her as they all waved goodbye. Down here's them waving goodbye. As Leola neared the open meadow, she smelled fresh washed laundry flapping in the breeze. With home in sight, she heard Grandma calling, and this time Leola did answer back. From that day on, even when she wanted to do what she wanted to do, Leola always listened to her grandma. Well, most of the time. And she never strayed too far from home again. I think Leola learned her lesson, didn't she? That she should listen to Grandma and she shouldn't stray too far from home. I hope you enjoyed Leola and the Honey Bears.